Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Ethan Tries to Use Electronics. In today's episode, it will be a miracle if I get this out. So if you're watching this, praise God, I figured it out. But had some other plans today, but I need to get this project done. Making some little legs for a log rack. Just gonna cradle it like so. Surprisingly complicated shape to make, but I really like it. Got these arrowheads on the arms. Holes will be back there. It's going to get riveted on. There's a couple rivets. And then we transition as it tapers from square into round. And then we have this cool ball on the end. It has a lot of facets. I think it's cool. It's always a fun challenge trying to get all of those even with a lump of metal on a stick. So we'll see. Hopefully you enjoy. I'm going to try not to take forever because I could and I would because I love it, but ain't nobody got time for that. So yeah, hope you enjoy. So the first thing we need to do is upset the material where you push it back in on itself. However, before we do that, I'm going to knock the corners in, which puts our point of impact closer into the center, which is what we want. And it also, because it's going to want to upset at the corners and the edges first, that'll help it to kind of counteract that. So always knock those in first, and yep, we'll see what upsetting looks like. I like to use this block because I don't have to stand up on something. I rotate it 90 degrees between each turn. And I'm just going to keep working those corners back in, upsetting the material. The farther I go, I'm going to start quenching the tip so that it moves less, and just keep it straightened out until I've exceeded 3/4 by a little bit, and then I'll forge it down to size. So now that I've got this nice massive material on the end, we went from 5/8 to 3/4, just so we have enough for the ball. I'm going to take a stock of a known dimension and just forge it down so that it's an even size, and I don't have to worry about having more or less mass than I did in the other ones, making them dissimilar. Let's see if we can give you guys a headache shaking you. Now that I have my upset on each end, I'm going to mark off the material that I want, and then you're going to see me use a 3/8 round fuller to create that division between the one size stock and the other. And that'll help me, the round fullers will help give it a nice smooth transition, hopefully. And I'm going to neck that down to about 1/2 inch, and then we'll start drawing our taper, and then rounding it out probably a little bit before we start putting the sides on our ball. So hopefully you were able to see from the other one that basically it's a lot of back and forth, pushing the material in and alternating between that and holding it up on an angle. I like to do opposite sides at a time because I feel like it helps keep the material much more centered. And it's really just about keeping all of your angles consistent, squaring up your faces, and then it's going to elongate some as I work. If I hold at a steeper angle, I can negate some of that. Another way is to push it and upset it a little bit, which I do in this rounded die, because I want the end to be rounded where it hits the floor. So basically just keep at it like that till it is done. So this is a technique called hot filing, which I'm not super in the habit of using, but I was inspired by reading some of Mark Asprey's works to try and do a little bit more to clean up my forgings, which usually I take it as a challenge to make them very clean by hand. But with these particular pieces, I figured it would be just fine. So really I'm just using a rasp. I'm gonna round the bottom off, and then I'm just gonna work my way around up here closer to the ball. I will be just kind of taking the corners off, and I have this flat one for the main surfaces, and then once I have covered those, I have this round one that I'm gonna take just for the transition there, which doesn't need a whole lot, so yep. So with that set, and I've kind of straightened them, cleaned up my facets, the next step is going to be cut them from the parent stock at the appropriate length. Then we're going to do a little bit of upsetting in the middle right before we cut it. And I could cut it, slit it I should say, with an angle grinder or bandsaw
or whatever, but I'm very happy to just hot cut those. I don't like using an angle grinder. I don't have a blade that fine on my bandsaw. So we're going to do that. The upsetting is because when we spread the limbs out, there's going to be a thinning of material at the intersection. And so we put a little material there ahead of time to try to prevent stress cracks and stuff from it getting too thin, too stretched, and just too pushed the wrong way.
Okay, so I've got the heat where I want it. I'm going to upset just slightly. I only want to upset it as far as the extra material that I allotted for. Okay. So I have my upsets, and then I squished it back to parallel sides there so that my upset is in that direction only, which is what I want. And they're both pretty much at the right length. I've marked my lines with the angle grinder, and then you're gonna see me use two tools. One is the handled hot cut because it's a lot easier to guide and walk along. And then I'm gonna take this much thinner chisel and finish the cut. I'm gonna go half and half from each side.
A lot of times people say that you should use like a cutting plate or the step of your anvil. My anvil doesn't have a step.
Which is true and fine, but since I'm not trying to cut all the way from one side, which creates a lot more distortion anyways, it'll be just fine. And then gonna work especially back here because that's always the spot that's the trickiest. And then typically it'll break through out at the tip and you just keep wedging it open. Essentially you get the material very thin and then you just split it apart. So, yep, that is all. So now that they are both split, I'm gonna take them, start bending the limbs out, and trying to get that transition fairly square, which is a little tricky, but we shall get her done. But first I have to clean out all that rag that forms. That's the one thing about using a chisel, is you end up with a lot of rag. Now I only need to remove enough of that to make it not create cold shuts when I forge it, where the material is folded over itself. And then the rest of it, sticking up and unevenness, I can just forge out with the hand hammer. Not a big deal. Okay, that pretty much sums it up. I just did a little straightening, a little bending, and a little drilling to get these guys finished out. Overall, they're close enough for what I want. All the little differences in length I'm just going to have to take out post-forging. So, but I'm really happy. I think they're similar enough. They'll work for what I want. There's kind of two that are more similar in this way and two in that way. So I'll divvy them up by side. That's kind of how it always is, especially when you're doing something new like this. But super happy. I'm going to try and, it's getting late, but I'm going to try and wrap this up tonight. Get some pictures I can roll out with this, if I can figure that out. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, learned something. Flameo, yo. That's embarrassing. And now, we make sure that my face is in frame. And again, we make sure that my face is in frame.